Hi everyone, thank you for tuning back in to Blabbing with Booksellers, a Waterstones Brighton podcast. I've promised you authors alongside our regular guests of Booksellers, and I've got a wonderful author with me today, an author whose work I absolutely adore, and I'm really excited. I just pestered this author with an email out the blue saying, "Will you come talk to me?" And Sunyi Dean kindly responded saying, "Sure, I will." And here we are. Thank you, Sunyi, for joining me.
It's always really nice to be asked. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'm a big believer in if you don't ask, you don't get. And I was like, what's the worst that could happen? And I think I told you I was next to my colleague in the store when you replied, and I was basically doing backflips on the first floor of the shop. So,
I mean, definitely ask. I think a lot of people for a lot of authors that transition from nobody to like published is quite sudden, and a lot of people are really
yeah.
happy to be asked. So,
Yeah, of course. I
um,
mean, on that, what my understanding of your journey as an author was quite a
yeah,
sudden one, right? You're
yeah.
not someone who had a long-term vision of becoming an author or a long-term dream of being a published author. Could you tell me a little bit about how that came up for you and what really kickstarted that journey?
Yeah, I can. It sounds a little bit melodramatic,
Okay.
but basically, um, so I came to the UK for university, and I kind of graduated into the 2008 recession.
Right.
And
Okay.
yeah, I did like another master's degree, and then I worked for a bit, and then I fell pregnant, and then I spent about 6 years fighting the UK immigration when they lost all my visa and documents, and it was just a long nightmare. And
Oh God.
by the end of
Okay.
that, I had yeah. I wouldn't say that I think just like most of the time, but because it's quite a long involved thing. But yeah,
Mm.
um, so at the end of that, I was in my late 20s. I had two small children with special needs. I'd been out of proper work for 9 years.
Right.
Um, oh, I think at that point it was like 7 years or something. And I just really felt like my life had dead ended in a way that I didn't expect.
Okay.
And that I was like, because when you grow up in like immigrant families and Asian families, everybody knows that writing is just like a really bad idea. You shouldn't do it. Like one
Yeah.
one thing I find really common with like East Asian writers is they usually say, "Oh yes, I wanted to write, but my parents said absolutely not." So they go and they get like a law job or something that pays bills, and
Yeah.
then they write once they have the money, and that's really really common. But I wrote because I felt like it was really bothering me that I was 29. I hadn't written the book that I wanted to write, and
Yeah.
I had nothing left to lose. So I might as well make this dumb decision. I could do it around kids who slept very badly in short bursts.
Yeah.
And I started writing that in kind of, I think my first novel, I finished it in 2016, and it was really, really terrible. I queried it, had about 130 rejections. Nobody
Wow.
liked it.
Yeah.
Um, Queried the second one, got an agent. We went on submission, which is where you send out to publishers,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody wanted that book either. So the third one I wrote, and that was called Paper Flesh at the time. It later got retitled to The Book Eaters,
Okay.
because
Oh,
they wanted
Paper
a
Flesh is a
less.
good title. I like that.
Yeah, I loved it, but they were like, it's a little bit horror, and it doesn't kind of like
Okay.
convey what the book is. And I was like, that's fair. But I think that's why the fictional nonfiction book in it, written by Anna Rinder, is called Paper Flesh.
Yes. Yeah. Nice
Yeah,
little Easter egg there. That's cool.
yeah, just to side, it's not a total waste, but
hmm
yeah, that went on submission, and I kind of wrote that during like the collapse of my marriage, and like
hmm
I was writing a book about a single mother while becoming one. And I went on submission after I just like moved out of my ex-husband's house, which is a
Wow.
long process.
Yeah.
Um, and we were living. I don't know if you probably don't know Leeds at all, but we were living in Harrow
I
Hills, which
do.
is a sort
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
it's this sort of infamous neighborhood. Just this house that had like no stove, no fridge, no washing machine, no hot water. It was
Right.
can we swear on this? It was like
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah. Yeah.
dreadful.
Fine.
Okay. Um, and then the book deal happened, and it was so different from the last time where I'd spent 18 months getting slow no's. It
Yeah.
sold in like a week. And I got the money in time for the advance to move me and my kids out to a house that was actually functional. And it was just,
Wow.
it really was like a change your life overnight. And after that, I spent the long process of kind of putting my life back together while trying to write and trying to do the next book.
hmm
And then I think that took a bit of time because there was stuff going on. I got stuck on the book. Editors kept changing, but at the end of it, we got Girl with a Thousand Faces. So
Wow. Yeah.
that's yeah, 4 year gap, but that's kind of why.
That's an amazing journey. I mean, so you said you've got nothing left to lose, and you want to kind of throw yourself at it now and make the thing happen. So
Yeah.
does that imply that you did kind of always have like a dream of being a published author? Was that always kind of sitting there for you, or
I think I wanted to. I liked writing. I think when I was a kid, I thought my dream job would be a reader because then I could just read.
yeah,
And I think if someone had told me how many free books you get when you get involved in publishing, I might have
yeah,
tried sooner because
uh-huh.
you get so. I mean, you probably get loads. Oh, you get loads as a bookseller, but
Yeah,
you get so many books for blurbs. NetGalley was like a
yeah.
revelation. You can get free books for writing reviews, which I did anyway at the time.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think I wrote a lot of fan fiction. I didn't really look into it seriously. I think literally started doing research in 2016. I was like, okay, what's a literary agent?
Yeah, how do I actually make this happen, kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that it's tricky because even if you do, I mean, I didn't do a course at uni, but even if you do like a creative writing course, they don't really tell you the business side of things. A lot of times, they
sure.
don't.
Hmm.
They're just like, here's how you put a book together, but the actual how do you get it published is
Yeah.
not often addressed. So
Absolutely. I think that's common across artistic fields. I mentioned in a previous episode that my background's as a creative. I'm an actor who went through drama school and stuff. And all of the training is all about how to like find different acting theories that apply to your way of
yeah.
working. It's never about how to speak to agents or how to network or how to function in a really brittle industry.
I did see that you were in like an episode of Red Dwarf. Sorry, I looked you up
Oh yeah.
because I get so many spam emails that are fake.
Sure. Yeah, of
I
course.
did that every request.
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah, this is not going to be about me, but yeah, I had one line in an episode of Red Dwarf about 12 years ago, but I grew up as an absolute nerd for that series. So that was like a dream come true kind of thing, you know? So yeah, I was really happy with that. So you write a lot of short form work too, as well as like The Buck Eaters and The Girl with a Thousand Faces. Um, to talk to me as a writer, what you kind of learn from those kind of short form experiences, because you hear a lot about
Yeah.
authors talk about kind of like putting a longer story arc together or working out the pacing or whatever, or the dual timelines that you like to use. What do you get as an author in experience from that short form work that you
I
write?
started short form after I started writing novels, so that
Yeah.
that was like a new skill.
Mm.
Um, and it was a way to. I think short stories they work or they don't. You know, a novel you can
Hmm.
play around with it. Uh, but I would use it as a way to like test certain craft things. You know, if I was experimenting with second person or dual point of view.
Yeah.
Um, but I also just really like my favorite form of fiction is flash fiction.
Yeah.
There's no money in it though. You can't just
Hmm.
write flash fiction. So I'm probably prouder of my flash couple of flash fiction pieces than anything else. It's like borderline, but almost poetry. I think
Yeah.
the way you structure it. You have to be very concise. You have to think a lot about imagery. You can be more experimental with short stories. It supports structures that just collapse on novels. It's
Hmm.
yeah, it's fun. I don't think it prepares you for novel writing. It's kind of its own skill.
Yeah, of course. But it's an actual journey of like creative
Yeah,
fulfillment rather than a space to just kind of play out ideas or kind of unclog the thought process, as it were. It's like a genuine passion for you to write
yeah,
those. Yeah,
yeah. I don't write them very often anymore. Well, it was a passion. I think now when I write them, it tends to be because someone's invited me to an anthology and I want to get
sure.
paid. So,
Yeah, fair.
so
Yeah.
I had to really let go of like this idea of how do you say like some of the ones I've written for anthologies, like they're fine. I definitely don't love them,
Okay.
but they're fine. But like I did one with Bloomsbury last year that was a real fairly big one. I had like Stu Turton in it because he's one of
Hmm.
my agent's clients. And it's like, okay, they're going to pay 3 grand. I can live with the fact that I don't love this
Yeah,
story.
absolutely fine. Yeah.
um,
Sometimes you have to say
so
yes to the gig, right?
yeah,
So
um,
with the
yeah.
Book Eaters then, which was your debut like full length novel, which is a wonderful read. Talk to me about where that kind of came up conceptually for you. What was the origin of that? Was it just the nugget of an idea of what would it be like in a world where people ate books, or what was the start of that for you?
I think we think about books as food anyway. If you're in the
Yeah.
industry, it's very um, we talk about things being like light or heavy reads and kind of sweet or
Uh huh.
bitter.
Yeah.
There's an editor Orbit that has a form of synesthesia where books have a taste to her, and she has
Ooh.
like that impacts how she acquires books because she'll be reading something and be like, oh, this just like gives her a bitter like copper taste, and she can't do it. Um,
Hmm.
I think things like that. But also, if you're from a certain generation and you grew up watching like the Gargoyles cartoons, which I
Yes.
don't think were a thing, you did.
I did.
Okay,
Yeah, I did.
okay. Finally, someone else who's seen this cartoon. It was so good, and it has the Macbeth character in it, and he
Hmm.
eats these magic books to get into
Yeah.
Avalon, and it's like a really visceral scene where he consumes it so that he has all of its knowledge. So there's like little pieces like that. There is also like a long running manga I think called The Book Eaters.
Okay, right.
Um, and I think it is like about I think they're kind of like yokai that eat books and they have like pet humans who write them poems and stuff to feed them.
Right, right.
um,
Wow.
so all those different things. I think when I originally envisioned it, it was more of like a Victorian setting tale, and then
Hmm.
it kind of grew again. It grew out of a short story about a sort of egotistical, struggling poet who meets a mysterious woman in a chat room.
Wow, cool. Yeah.
I know it's so different from the final thing, and then, but then the very first short story I wrote was about a woman in a post-apocalyptic setting with her son who's got destructive powers, and they're traveling through this kind of world
Uh-huh.
from town to town. And I think at some point all of those things fused, and I just ended up. I wanted the relationship from that short story, but the idea of eating books, and it
Yeah.
just kind of gradually came together.
Really
And then I
interesting.
wanted one
Yeah.
that celebrated the north of England because so many
Yeah.
books about Britain are set in London.
Do you know what?
So,
That was a really refreshing thing to me as well. When I picked it up, I was not expecting it to be filled with so many places I recognised. I'm based now in Brighton, obviously, but I'm from the northeast originally. So
are you?
I've spent a lot of time in Newcastle train station, and I've been
You've
to
betrayed
Alnwick.
us.
Yeah, I did. I moved to become an actor in London. Okay, it was for the art.
No, fair, fair.
But no, but like when you're like you're name dropping Alnwick and stuff, which is where my grandparents had a caravan and I used to go as a kid. And so, what was it about? Why did that story feel like it needed to be set in the Northeast specifically? What was it about that location that best served that narrative or those characters?
I love the North, but also I like even though I like fantasy, I like the Bronte sisters and that kind of gothic fiction, which is set in the North.
Yeah,
And I did the NC 500 with my partner, we went through, you know, a lot of those locations through
yeah,
Scotland and the border counties. We went to Traquair House, which is a real place. You can visit it.
yeah.
The tour guide was not, it wasn't, the book wasn't out yet, but he wasn't impressed when I told him the house burns down in the book.
Oh no.
But that's fine. Um, I just really, I love, I think like I've lived in different places in the world, and actually Northumberland is probably my favorite place on earth. I just think it's really
Yeah.
pretty. I know I slagged off Anik a little bit, and I remember having one reviewer who wrote in and was like, I think Sunny Dean should return and visit it and see how beautiful it is. I was thinking, no, thank you.
Yeah, right. I'm good, thanks though.
I've been there. It's okay.
Yeah,
But yeah, and then just the 90s is because it's, you know, so much easier to write books when people don't have smartphones.
absolutely. Yeah, totally. It's just that narrative loophole, isn't it? It's that whole
Yeah.
thing I see people say about Home Alone, and if they rewrote Home Alone, it just wouldn't work because he just sent a
Yeah.
text and be like, "Mom, you left me," you know.
Yeah.
So come back. Oh, sorry, done. End of film credits. But no, I love that because I think the Northeast has a really kind of such a strong sense of identity and community.
Mm.
The way people communicate, the way that the towns and smaller villages kind of operate kind of independently of the larger cities and stuff, whereas in the south it kind of feels like everything's centric to London in a way, and it's like you might be tied to it loosely but you're kind of tied to it independent on it. It isn't the
Mm.
case in the northeast, so it was lovely to read that set and kind of represented as someone who knows it, because a lot of stereotypes come up, I think, when the North is written by people who haven't lived it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I love the discrepancy. You do get some very grim cities, but then the really beautiful countrysides, and it's just the
Yeah,
kind of sat side by side. I did think when I wrote it, oh, this is a dumb decision because if I want it to be a bigger market, I should set it in America.
right.
Um, and but then the American side were the first publisher to pick it up, and I
Mm,
remember asking my editors like, "Oh, you know, I thought it would be more like a British kind of coded book. Did it,
yeah.
you know, how did you find the setting?" And she was like, "Oh, it's just like reading a fantasy land, you know," because
Oh,
they just think England is so kind of
yeah.
fantasy esque, I guess.
Yeah, you know, what, it reminds
Um,
me of a story. It's totally tangential, but I remember being on a train once with an ex-partner of mine going to the Lake District, and there was an American tourist couple on the seats opposite us who saw some cottages that had like smoke coming out the chimneys, and they were just living their lives in those houses. And there's like, look, honey, they even have smoke coming out the chimneys. And as they kept talking, it became really apparent that they thought the Lake District was a theme park.
oh Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was like, I hate to
That's
tell you. I was
amazing.
like, I have to intervene. I'm really sorry. I'm that person.
No,
But
no,
yeah.
no. Hey, interventions are good. I used to have a friend. She moved from Singapore, and
Mm.
she didn't realize she thought woolly lambs were fake, the way teddy bears are like a fake version of bears.
Oh, wow.
So when
Interesting.
she saw sheep in the countryside, she was mind blown. She was like, "I didn't
Yeah.
think they looked like I don't know what she thought sheep looked like, but
Yeah.
anyway, she didn't think they looked like woolly sheep." So
Yeah, fair. So in the book is, and again, you see it kind of
yeah,
your pattern of writing within the Girl with a Thousand Faces too. I mentioned before, but dual timelines. You
yeah.
kind of seem to like to set up a present narrative and then loop back to give the context to what is happening in the present to change and affect how you feel about it. What is it about that structure that really appeals to you or draws you in or is easier for you to write? Why does that work for you?
So it's slightly cynical, but when I sat down to write Book Eaters, having sort of failed with my first two books, I was thinking a lot
Mm,
about the fantasy genre and the fact that it is actually one of the smallest genres in terms of sales success.
right.
Um, the biggest slice of pie goes to thrillers and romance, and I spent like a year reading thrillers, trying to work out what is it about these books that is like resonating with readers.
Yeah.
And I think it's because in fantasy, a lot of books do tend to have a structure that's focused on the protagonist. It's about the protagonist journey and how they progress.
Yeah.
Whereas like thrillers or something like Where the Crawdads Sing, which is always my iconic example, it's really focused on the reader experience. So
Yes.
the girl in that actually has quite a flat arc. But the way that the story is told to you, you go through all these emotional twists of like, oh, you feel bad for her, you're suspicious of her, this thing happened, you're
Yeah.
pulled in all these directions, and it's the way that that information is given to you that creates the reader journey.
Yes.
And I wanted to do that. And often I find thrillers and mainstream novels more like movies. They're willing to skip around. They don't follow the kind of standard arc.
Hmm.
And it's all about information control. And because, you could tell Girl with a Thousand Faces in a straight story, and it would be really boring, to be honest. Um, Book Eaters would still kind of work that way, but I think it would be less effective. It would have a lot slower
Sure.
sections.
So when coming to write The Girl with a Thousand Faces after Bucky is kind of tied up and on shelves, was it intentional? Did you know before you put pen to paper or start typing on your keyboard that that was the structure you'd use?
No, I mean that book was it was so difficult to write because I went into it
Mm,
without a sense of what the story was, and it just went through many, many, many drafts.
okay.
Probably like over 120, 150,000 words that just went in the bin kind of thing.
Right.
Um, and the protagonist kept changing age, sex, location, gender, everything was
Hmm.
so I think initially I kind of worked out that yeah, I wanted to write about Kowloon, but I also wanted to write about the Japanese occupation, and there's a 30-year
Yes.
gap between those two things. So
Hmm.
I do think, yeah, fairly early on, I was like, okay, there's going to be two timelines again,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, but it
yeah,
really, but as you say, it really works. Like the fact that you set up Mercy and everything that's happening in the present world, and you load us with reasons to empathize with Mercy, and then you kind of rewrite the narrative on her as you continue, and it's so effective. But you touched on something I really wanted to ask you about, like the setting of that first part, particularly
yeah.
of Kowloon, the Walled City, is so fascinating to me, and I think it's something I've always been fascinated with from like a narrative potential perspective.
Mm,
Like it's used in a video game called Shenmue that was out in the late 90s, and it's used in
okay.
a couple of like martial arts films that I remember in the 90s. But I
Yeah.
can't remember seeing it like really utilized because I feel like, I mean, you can tell me, but as a setting, it feels like a gift in terms of the ideas and the atmosphere and the like narrative potential of it. Like, what was it about Kowloon? You were brought up near it, I believe.
I think it does get used, but not in that form. Like it influences a lot of cyberpunk. I think
Sure.
it features it definitely features in animes and mangas. Maybe they don't always get wider kind of circulation.
Yeah.
There was that recent video game where you play as a cat.
Yes, Stray.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't remember what it's called, but
Yeah.
that's basically canon. Uh, it yeah, I my school was kind of built outside it, but the remnants of it. So it has like a concrete wall and a barbed wire fence. They've moved campuses since then.
Yeah.
But I mean, when they demolished it kind of when I was born or shortly after. So I've never been to it. There's
Hmm.
just a park there now. But we did grow up with stories of it, and my grandmother was familiar with it, and my mother was familiar with it. And you didn't go into it, and you didn't go near it in case you got like I don't think it was that unsafe, but there was kind of like, oh, if you go close to it, they kidnap girls and, take
Wow.
them to the walled city. Kind of, it's what people believed. I don't think it really was that common.
Yeah.
And it has a really, I think, complicated history with Christianity.
Hmm.
A lot of missionaries like to go into the walled city.
Right.
And they did good things, but also there's, questions of colonization and stuff there. But anyway, yeah,
Sure.
I find it really interesting. I think it's just, it had the potential to talk about some of the things I was interested in, the kind of legacy of Hong Kong colonialism and war and all this stuff. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was really interesting weaving that together with essentially like a supernatural ghost story and bringing in
mm.
all of those kind of cultural elements. So when you were starting to develop the idea, I know you said a lot of words went in the bin and you were trying to work out what the story was. What was the heart of it for you that you were that was there from the start? What was if you didn't know what the narrative was in a longer form, what was the concept that made you want to run with that idea?
Initially, I'd sat down with my editor for book two, and she'd said, "Oh, what are you thinking working on?" And I'd given her all these like half finished projects that I'd kind of
Mm,
started, and she wanted me to try something completely new.
yeah.
So I literally just started with location for that one. And I think
Right.
maybe the closest I got was that the first thing I'd written down was a woman travels to the city in search of someone, but the person she's searching for is herself, which is actually not too far from how it
Yeah, do you
ended
know
up.
what? Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, with a few twists and turns along the way, but absolutely.
Yeah, and I think I did get really, really stuck at one point, and because I do quite a lot of planning usually,
Hmm.
and at one point I think I just had to put it all aside. Ended up writing a scene that was very, very sensory, that was based on all the times when I was a teenager we'd taken junk boats out to the islands and stuff,
Hmm.
and that scene was the opening scene where you switch perspective to second person,
Yes.
where you're just on the boat. And I think writing that, I was like, okay, I like this. How do I make it work? And it was
Yeah.
the start of kind of pulling that book together.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, as I say, we jump around with the timeline.
Yeah.
How did you go about mixing in kind of the almost like more spiritual aspects of it? The obviously ghosts have like all kinds of different cultural connotations depending where you are in the world. Like, did that come later as a way to kind of flesh out that original nugget of story you had in mind, or was that always going to be part of it?
The ghosts were always part of it, definitely.
Yeah.
I spent, again, a long time reading ghosts and mythology, and
Hmm.
I think ghosts have that role already in a lot of Chinese stories.
Yeah.
They are about people who lost out on life, basically, and
Yeah.
they are generally women, and they do, they're a way of writing stories about people who their way of writing stories about people who are doing things which aren't socially acceptable a lot of times,
Sure.
or giving
Hmm.
them agency. So an example I've used before is, if you were a woman living in that time period and your husband died, you didn't get remarried.
Yeah.
But if you were dead as well and a ghost, then someone could write a story about your second chance romance, right? So there are stories
Yeah.
about ghosts who they died when their husband did, and they come back and they get married again. They have children because they're corporeal,
Right.
and it was, or they get revenge, or they have power, or they're fickle, or they sleep around. And basically, it was almost like if women were ghosts, they could do anything in
Yeah, of
these stories.
course. Yeah.
And there was a sense of like almost the empowerment to it, I guess,
Hmm.
angle. And I think I found that side of it really interesting. But yeah, I think when I spent a lot of time reading nonfiction stuff about the war as well, and I do
Yeah.
think a lot of how China is now is a holdover from everything they went through in World War II,
Hmm.
and the legacy that left, that you can't just lose like 20 to 30 million people and not have repercussions that echo through
Absolutely.
your generations.
Yeah, of
So
course. Yeah, and but in terms of that, I mean, you hit obviously major key events that happened,
yeah,
and but how was it in terms of like choosing the ways in which the war affected the characters in your book? Because there's a lot you could leave out, there's a lot you could include. You picked key events and kind of really got a sense of the like, encroaching oppression. How was it trying to represent that within this kind of spiritual story and ghostly story? How was it bringing in real world
yeah.
events and intertwining them with that?
I think it fits really well because,
Mm,
ghosts are something people still believe in, and so it is
absolutely.
still
Yeah.
integrated into how they think about the world. And that's actually I mean, a slight tangent, but ghost stories like that are actually kind of not allowed to be published in China,
Wow.
ironically. Well, because the CCP is, in theory, a secular organization, so they don't support promotion of things which are um, superstitious.
Yeah.
And I think for things something like Tolkien or Lord of the Harry Potter, or whatever, there's an understanding that okay, there aren't little hobbits and wizards running around. That's
Hmm.
okay, but people still believe in gods and ghosts, so they are very
Yeah.
careful about
Okay.
what they allow
Yeah.
to be published,
Makes sense. Yeah.
um, which is sort of ironic. But yeah, I sorry, completely forgot the question now.
No, it's just
Oh
how
yeah,
was it? How was it balancing like the weight of those real world events with the fictional narrative that you were creating?
I just trial and error. I think. Like I
Yeah.
know I didn't want to go into detail the way the Poppy War does because
Sure.
I can't write that and I would struggle with it.
Hmm.
I'm glad she wrote those books. I'm glad that those books are really educational to a lot of people. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think I wrote the level that I was comfortable at, basically,
Hmm.
because we studied all that history in school and it was very grim, and
Yeah.
I
Of
can't
course.
put that on the page again. So
Yeah. And it had to serve your characters and the story you're telling of them rather than become the focus of the story in itself, right? So
yeah,
it's, yeah, the story you were telling was affected by that, but not about that directly
yeah,
for them in the moment, I suppose.
yeah,
The first thing that struck me about The God of a Thousand Faces, and you've touched on it, is that we meet Mercy, our protagonist in the first part, and she's in her 50s. And
yeah,
I can't remember genuinely the last time I read a book, particularly with a female main character
yeah,
who is in her 50s. Talk to me about the gift that that gives you as a writer and what that opens up in terms of possibilities. And I guess she's 50, she's in her 50s because you're working backwards in terms of the timeline, allowing for
yeah.
everything, right? But yeah, what did that do to your approach of Mercy, given that she was in her 50s rather than 19, like most female protagonists we encounter?
Well, I think who among us has not wanted to be, a 53-year-old tattooed angry lady?
Absolutely.
That might be our final form. Um, she's great. I think I know that the character is young in Crawdad's saying, but I was always really struck by the fact that the author was like 69 when she published.
Right.
And I
Okay.
think when you bring that kind of perspective to books, it adds a lot. I think that Mercy has the chance to be complex and to be lots of people and to be
Hmm.
sensible and to not make dumb decisions. I wanted Devon to be older than the book eaters, and the maths just didn't work. I think
Right.
29 was the absolute oldest I could make her.
Okay.
Um, Otherwise, I'd have tried to put her in her 30s or 40s. But
Hmm.
and I remember there are some books like David Gemmell. He wrote the Waylander series, and I remember reading
Hmm.
those as a kid. And the first one I read, Waylander was like 60, and it like blew my mind. It's like I've never read a book with a 60-year-old
Yeah.
adventuring hero. I don't. He's a bit old fashioned. I don't know if you've read him,
I
but
haven't actually. No, I haven't.
yeah, he's very kind of sword and sorcery, and everyone's wearing chainmail bikini kind of 90s books, but they are
Hmm.
fun, they're unpretentious.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to have older characters kicking ass and taking names. I think that had a little bit of an impact. And
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
yeah, I think I love anime, but I also get fed up that everyone's 13 in them. So
totally. But I think this is why it's so like it was so refreshing to read Mercy and read her perspective because we're so used to being presented again always older women who are kind
yeah,
of just there to serve other people's narrative and are there and they're kind of like past what they were there to offer and all of those tedious kind of offerings we normally get sometimes. But Mercy is there and she's proactive and engaged and capable and smart and clever and really witty. And I love the wit in your books as well. I think it's a very natural, like driven but human sense of humor. And but I thought Mercy was a really refreshing character to read. So thank you for her because she's brilliant.
that's very kind.
I,
See, some people think the humor is quite juvenile. I was thinking, well, that's just Cantonese humor. They're very
yeah,
Cantonese humor is very I guess a little bit on the crass side, although I find it
sure.
quite funny.
Yeah, no, but I think it worked and it felt within the voice of the characters as well, you know. So, I think one of my favorite things from again just talking about that first part because I don't want to spoil the wonderful
Yeah,
reveals that you sow throughout the book because they're so worth just discovering organically. I think the relationship that Mercy has with the ghosts as well, and I mean, you tell me, but because she is that older woman in her
yeah,
50s approaching these ghosts who again are female, it's
mm,
less about pacifying the ghosts and helping them find peace. It's what do you need, whatever that may be, and helping her achieve it. And I
yeah,
loved how like dark that turns quite quickly. So that I assume was an incredibly intentional choice of let's liberate these people by fulfilling their need.
Yeah, I remember going to a panel which was talking about ghosts around the world, and how it's saying one of the differences in how Western and Eastern ghosts are, which I think the book touches on, is
Hmm.
maybe the difference between the Japanese and the American ring, where
Yeah.
the American ring they have to go to all these lengths to show you that the people who are affected by this curse are innocent, they didn't deserve it, and therefore the ghost is a monster and it must be beaten. And
Hmm.
in the Japanese ring, they're just like, no, it's just happening, and you just have to deal with it. And whether you're innocent or not is irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's a community problem, not a personal monster you have to fight
Hmm.
necessarily. And I think she's trying to approach it from that. But also just there are, like, if you go to Hong Kong, they still have like street wizards who
Hmm.
are often Chinese aunties, so like middle-aged ladies, and you can go to them. There's like a bunch under this bridge in Causeway Bay, and pay for them to like curse people for you. And
Wow.
they're not young people doing that, so
Hmm. It's a great way to make a
uh,
living.
yeah, their business has suffered a bit because under the new laws, you're not allowed to criticize government officials, and that extends to cursing them. So I
Okay,
think
right.
politicians were a popular target.
Fair.
But you can still go and get your ex cursed, and they like print out like a little thing of them, and they beat it with their shoe and
Yeah,
stuff. So
sure.
that's fun.
I need to book a holiday. This for no reason other than seeing the sights,
No
obviously.
reason at
Yeah.
all.
But yeah, but yeah, as you know, I loved The Girl with a Thousand Faces. It is obviously in our stores, and the record on the shelf is written by myself. If anyone's listening to this from Brighton, please go to the store, please check it out. How are you feeling kind of post-release, post-reception to that book? Are you feeling kind of fulfilled by the response to it? Do you feel like you got across what you were trying to? It's been very well received from everything I've seen, and the people who've read it have loved it. How do you feel?
A mixed bag. I think it's a really weird thing. I've got different publishers on different side of the Atlantic, and it's like a
Mm,
bigger book for the American one than it is for the UK one.
right.
Um, and I think the critical reception is generally better. I think it'll probably sell less well because just the setting is maybe a little more niche, and I think the plot twist throws some people for a loop. That a lot of
Okay.
people do, well, not a lot, but like there are definitely people who get to the second bit and like, wait, where did Mercy go? What's happening to the
Yeah,
story?
totally.
Um, I think, yeah, I was happy with it, but also, by the time a book comes out, it's been like a year since you've handed it in,
Yeah.
and mentally you've moved on to the next thing. So, yeah, I'm happy it's out there. I'm pleased about it, but I'm a little cautious. I don't know how my publisher will feel after a year. We'll see.
Yeah. I think actually touching on what you just said there, I think one of the things that's like courageous as an author to put out isn't the pacing of that novel is quite unique for me as a reader experience. It builds to kind of a crescendo point at the end of the first part, and then slows it right back down and almost starts over, and then it does that
Yes.
again, and it's this like two reinvestment points as a reader, I think. But I think what like because you are so enraptured and engaged and empathizing with your characters in the first part, you invest again quite happily, I think. But I don't think I've personally read a book that the pacing does that and peaks three times in that way. Did that feel like a kind of a tricky decision to make? Did that feel like a risk at all, or
Yeah, I think it was definitely a risk, and it was probably the thing that got rewritten the most because
okay?
me and my editors kept trying to go back and forth on the structure, and at one point, I think we had it down to like, it would be Mercy in the present, and then it would cut back to the island,
Yeah.
and that actually just made it worse. It just slowed the pacing to a crawl because it takes like 20 chapters for Mercy to get anywhere with
Hmm.
what she's doing. And it felt better and it was just so convoluted because there's effectively four timelines. It felt better to just make a clean break
Absolutely.
and trust that some readers would follow to the end. And I think, some do. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, but I think because it's like quite a unique structure, I think that's partly why it's so engaging because you're being told a different kind of story. And I agree with you. I think if I'd read it and it was jumping between timelines a lot, I don't think you'd be able to get the weight of empathy for Mercy that we get.
yeah.
I think it would suffer because it would be more fractured. But yeah, I was just interested to hear your take on that because it felt like a fresh start each time, which is really cool. So
Yeah, I think I wanted it to feel like you kind of get pulled beneath the water almost to a different, I don't
absolutely.
know.
Yeah, no, totally. I'd agree with that for sure. Yeah. So not to get a scoop on what you're working on next or anything,
No,
but
it's fine.
have you started thinking about what might be next for you?
So, having taken so long on this one, I actually had the idea for the book after and was really, really keen on it. And I
Ooh,
think maybe because I wrote it without editor input, it came together in about 8 months.
wow, cool.
And I handed it in March and had the first edit letter back. So I'm working through that. We can't agree on a title, which happened with book
Okay.
two.
Yeah.
But it'll be out probably fall 2027 is what we've penciled in.
That's
So
really exciting. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, it must be something that's really kind of sparking you to just dive straight back in again. I love that as a creative when you're halfway through one thing and there's something already else kind of buzzing away in the back of your mind. So yeah,
yeah,
does it explore kind of similar themes, or are you moving into new territory?
so I mean, I don't mind talking about it, but
Mm,
having done like Britain and then Hong Kong, this one goes all the way back to Texas. So
right,
it's a
cool.
kind of it's a near future. I know it's a bit of a change.
Mm,
I pitched it as like Station 11 meets Scanner Darkly. It's probably closer to normal people with a slice of Fallout, but I
right,
pitched it as
nice.
a near future sci-fi post-apocalyptic set in rural Texas.
Ooh,
And it
nice.
it basically has a near future world where there has been a pandemic. Nobody panic when I say that word. There has been a pandemic that's inflicted the planet. Sorry, afflicted the planet,
Hmm.
and that disease makes the people who are sick experience a kind of religious fervor. They think that they are experiencing enlightenment. They don't think that they're dying. They think that they're
Ooh,
ascending to another plane of existence. So the sick want to be sick and they don't want to cure. They're not interested. They almost become like religious zealots. There is a treatment for it, one treatment that's an antibiotic, um, which you have to be on forever. It can't clear the infection, but it can just stall it indefinitely. However, its side effects involve crippling depression.
oh
So on the one
wow.
hand, you have a pandemic which gives you religious, euphoria, or you
Yeah.
have a disease. Sorry. A drug which gives you kind of clinical depression, and the main character of the novel is responsible for both the drug and the disease.
Oh
Um,
wow, that is
and
such a cool idea. It's such a
thank
cool
you.
idea. Yeah, I see why that
So
was exciting to you, and given the
yeah,
the sources of inspiration you mentioned as well, that's exciting.
he has to kind of figure out how do you live with guilt when you are basically kind of the worst person to ever have lived, and what he does about it, and what he's trying to do to fix it, and can you fix it, and all this stuff.
Right.
Um, but hopefully it'll be fun and a little bit
Yeah,
faster paced than
and
the last
a nice
one.
light read by the sound of it.
Yeah, well,
No, that sounds really exciting, and as a fan of your work, I'm just excited. There's
thank
going to
you.
be another book of yours on our shelves. That's awesome. So thank you so much for your time. It's been really, really genuinely lovely talking to you. Thank you for answering my barrage of questions.
No, it
um,
was really good. Thank you.
I wrap up every podcast by asking whoever I'm speaking to recommend a book. So if you'd be happy to, would you recommend a book to our listeners?
Yeah, can it be more than one?
Absolutely, it can. Yeah, go for it. I
Okay.
asked one because I don't want to take
Yeah.
people's time, but if you want to throw
No, no,
many at
that's
us, go
fine.
for it.
I mean, if you're kind of, I don't know what genres your readers listen to, but if you're listening and you're thinking, oh, the Hong Kong setting sounds really interesting, um, there's a book called Harbour of Hungry Ghosts by Eliza Chan, which is out in
Hmm.
July,
Okay.
and that's set in Hong Kong, kind of 1890s, and she really goes more into like the mechanics, I guess, of the magic and the ghosts and the exorcisms, but she also brings in this kind of colonial aspect where the British come to Hong Kong and they bring their fairies with them. So what happens when British
Ooh.
fairies meet Chinese ghosts, and what goes on there? But if you're not into fantasy, there's a book called When Sleeping Women Wake by Emma Payen,
Hmm.
which is like it's set in Hong Kong during the Japanese occupation. And it's purely historical, and it's that goes more into what it's like to live in
Yeah.
occupation, and
Hmm.
it's kind of a little bit more intense in that way. And then my final rec is just the book I'm reading at the moment, which is There Is No Antimemetics
Oh,
Division,
it's
which
great,
is
isn't it?
is it's huge and
It's
it's fucking phenomenal.
yeah,
It's definitely one of the best books I've read in years. I can't believe how much it lives up to the hype.
yeah. It's a
The
great
least said
book.
about it, the better. Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, I'm a fan of video games, And it was only a couple of years ago I caught up on the game Control that deals with a lot of that. And I didn't realize the direct link between that video game and that book. Um,
Oh, I don't know that.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, I won't spoil it because it would be to reveal some of what happens. But take a look, or maybe I'll email you a link or something. But yeah, there's a direct
Yeah, yeah.
link in the creation of that game and that book, which is really cool. But yeah, fantastic. It all kind of plays around with the idea of how do we tackle an enemy that erases our memory that it even exists in the first place. And it's,
Yeah.
yeah, cool book. Yeah. Thank you so much for the recommendations. We've got
No worries.
three to choose from, listeners, which is very generous. So, Sunny, thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited to see your next book when it hits shelves. And
Oh, thank you.
in the meantime, I'll see your books on the shop floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Nice one.